Okay, good morning. Good morning for those that are in the room and those that are out on the webcast. We are going to go ahead and get started with our first session of today. Super excited for day 3 of MLK. So my name is Tiffany Stevens. I'm the Culture Inclusion Manager here at Frito-Lay, and super excited to talk to you today about what we have in store for you. We have a great lineup ranging from external speakers to share topic on our MLK theme of Live the Legacy. They're going to be highlighting some of our key areas of one community, advocating for change, and equality for all. We hope that they inspire you today to make meaningful changes through these 45-minute sessions. We actually have 4 workshops for you today. So let me go ahead and just review our lineup for today for you so you can know what to expect. So starting off this morning, we have Lamont Robinson joining us, and I'm going to have my committee team introduce Lamont here shortly. Then you'll have a 30-minute session to have lunch or to grab lunch, and then we'll hear from Omar Suleiman. He'll talk to us a bit about humanizing others. We'll reset for 15 minutes and then go right into a fireside chat to talk about why becoming an inclusive leader is important. So we'll be joined by Beverly Wright as well as Beth Gurwey, and we'll have a great conversation around that. Then we'll end today's session with Understanding the Concepts of Privilege, presented by Sherry Crosby Willer. And she will talk to us about what privilege means and takes us through a really great exercise. So I know that there's some in the room, so if you have any questions during today's session, feel free to engage throughout the session today. Also, for those that are on the webcast, in order for you to submit questions, please use the Q&A question feature on the webcast and/or send the email directly to tiffanyRstevens@pepsico.com, and we will field your questions. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my committee, Sonia, to introduce our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sonia, as Tiffany mentioned. I am super excited today to introduce our first speaker and honored and have the privilege of taking you through his bio. So our first speaker of the day will be Mr. Lamont Robinson. He is the founder and CEO of Robinson LaRue Consulting, LLC. Gotta mention that part. Also known as RLC, which is a firm that specializes in launching supplier diversity programs. He has been a leader in supplier diversity for the past 15 years after receiving a plethora of national awards and acknowledgments. His most treasured achievement is receiving the 2010 Corus Boyd Leadership and Diversity Award from the Federation of American Hospitals, which recognizes an individual or company that has made an outstanding contribution in fostering leadership and workplace diversity in the healthcare industry. In 2014, Lamont authored his autobiography titled Transformational Journey of a Bastard, which details his personal experiences in overcoming challenges on Chicago's violent West Side to achieve success. As a widowed father of 5, Lamont is constantly trying to achieve the balance between fatherhood and his children and building his company and his personal enjoyment and activities. So let's give it a round of applause and a warm welcome to Lamont Robinson.
Hopefully I'm on. Yes. Thank you very much. First off, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to get this opportunity to talk about my story, but more importantly, just be amongst you. What I will tell you is, as a kid, my favorite commercial was the Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial. I would perform it, but my knees are kind of hurting right now, so it's been a while. But again, I'm excited. And then also to be here to talk about Martin Luther King and just what he meant for me and the impact that he's had on me. I think of words like, when I think of him, like courage. I think of equality. I think of just a leader. Someone that stepped out and was a trailblazer. And that's what we try to do. That's what I try to emulate. And so what I'm going to walk you through today is, we all have challenges that we are faced with all the time. Some of us, first of all, everybody has a story. And so the person that's to your left or to your right, they have a story. So they've had to overcome something that allowed them to be able to be where they are today. So that's what I'm going to walk you through is just how did my challenges push me to the person that I am today? So, I've broken this down into to various sections. So the first section I want to talk about is foundation. And each section is a quote from Dr. King. So I'm just going to read it real quick. An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. So as was mentioned, I grew up on the west side of Chicago. Very bad neighborhood. It was drug infested, gang violence. And so for me, coming home was, and this is as a 6-year-old, I'd come home to our apartment, and on one side of the apartment was my two sisters snorting cocaine. And on the other side of the apartment was my brother wiping off his sawed-off shotgun because he was a leader of a gang there. And so for me, that was normal. I didn't know it any other way. And the neighborhood that I grew up in, it was all African-American neighborhood. None of us had white-collar jobs. And so for me, I didn't know what that change was going or how it was going to occur. And typically in a neighborhood like that, you get out either through entertainment or sports. So I am tall, but I wasn't making an NBA. And in entertainment, we did do things to kind of entertain ourselves. So we formed the group, dance group. We used to imitate initially the Jacksons. And then again, that's why I love that commercial. But then we started getting into Prince and the Revolution, when Purple Rain came out. So I was the bass player. I wasn't Prince, too tall for that. And then we went into New Edition. So we imitated New Edition. If those of you may know, if you don't know New Edition, if you heard New Kids on the Block, they stole all of that from New Edition. So just, Belle Biv DeVoe came from New Edition, Bobby Brown, Ralph Tresvant. And so I mention that because having that group really formed that brotherhood. It gave us an opportunity to really form something that was special. And so it actually helped us, it really protected us because the gangs in the neighborhood, they thought that we were going to make it out that way. And so if they saw us doing something that we shouldn't do, that was going to lead us down a certain path, they would stop us because they wanted us to get out a certain way. So when we would perform, they would actually, and this was, both at the time in Chicago, you had the Vice Lords and you had the Disciples. And so they would stop and they would actually look at us perform. And one of the things that I've always remembered vividly was the looks on their faces, just the smiles that they would show as we were performing. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to be serving others. That was something I didn't know exactly how I wanted to serve, but I wanted to serve others. And so I knew education was also going to be my way out. And so when you think about a neighborhood like that, first off, physically, you've got to survive. There'd be times we sitting in the playground and all of a sudden they just start shooting. And so you go upstairs, you run upstairs, and you come down 15 minutes later as if nothing happened. So I remember the girls jumping rope, they would just drop the rope down and they would go upstairs and they would come right back down like nothing happened. But I knew that there was something different. I knew that that was not going to be the way that I was going to get out. And so for that, I want to go to the next phase in a sense of my life. So the transformation phase. And that's this, I love this quote from King. We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. So the ship that I had initially in that city, that inner city, consisted of only African American. I wasn't exposed to any cultures. And so I was fortunately to the valedictorian in elementary school. So I didn't know that was something that existed. But education was always, for me, the way that I was going to be able to get out. And so I was able to apply to this program called A Better Chance, which takes academically gifted inner city kids and place them into better high schools around the country. And so I left home at the age of 14 to go to this high school right outside of Philly called Lower Merion. And so if you're a sports fan, you know that Kobe Bryant went there. He came 2 years after I graduated. I put us on the local map. He kind of broadened it a little bit, just a little bit. But the thing about that program and really that experience was, number one, it physically removed me from the neighborhood. And I remember going, and it was in this neighborhood that was very quiet. I can actually hear birds versus, in Chicago. And I remember the first 2 weeks I couldn't sleep because, I'm hearing things I'd never heard before. Like I heard crickets. I remember seeing a cricket for the first time, and you take away my man card because I was running away from it. I would rather be around bullets than crickets. But that peace and calm feeling that I had there, I didn't have that in the city. almost to a point where you get PTSD because when it is peace and calm, you're thinking that something is about to happen. So you're always on edge, like what's going to happen? That was the first time that I was actually able to breathe. It was also the first time that I was able to get exposed, to different cultures, to different religious backgrounds, to different economic classes and things of that nature. And that really broadened my world. And so when I went back home during the breaks, I remember going back to that old neighborhood and just afraid because now all of a sudden I was building a brand. Now all of a sudden I had something that was an asset that I needed to protect. And so it wasn't cool for me to hear gunshots and for me to just run upstairs and then come back down. It wasn't cool for me in a sense to have no hope. So for me, I had to take that and to really bottle it up into something that I had to protect. So I remember coming home and I would just kind of stay home and I didn't want to go out anywhere because of that brand that I was all of a sudden starting to package. And so then, for me, education also provided a way for me to be able to figure out what is it that I wanted. Initially, I thought I wanted to be an accountant. So I don't know if any of you guys are accountants in here, but I tried it. I wasn't good at it. And for me, I'm a people person. And so, my first internship, I was in the basement punching numbers. And I realized that wasn't for me. I needed to do something different. So anyway, after I graduated from the high school program, I went back to Chicago. And that's where I did my undergrad and I got my MBA there. And also where I met my wife and eventually settled down to have a family. And so the next phase of my life came. And so the maturation phase, which some people probably that know me would still say, you haven't reached that phase yet. But so I love this quote from Dr. King. And it's the ultimate measure of a man or woman is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. This truly is the ultimate measure of a person. When you're able to go through and experience life's trials and tribulations, and then to turn that around into something big and special. So for me, we got married, had 5 kids, moved down here. That was a challenge in itself. And then I had some other challenges with work and things of that nature. And then also, all of a sudden, starting in 2015, I started experiencing some significant challenges. And really, I saw this quote, and it hit home with me, and it's, take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. My faith was tested several times. In 2015, I lost the person that was the most important person in my life at that moment. It was my mom. So she died of cancer, and I grew up in a single parent household, and so she was everything for me. She was my rock. So when that happened, it was a big blow. And then in 2017, found out that wife had cancer, and eventually lost my father figure 2017, and then later that year lost my wife in 2017. And when you're faced with these challenges, first off, as a father now, a single father of 5 that range from 21 to 3. Yes, I said 21 to 3. You now have to realize that you don't have anybody that you need to that you can depend on in terms of helping to raise these kids. You got to do it all on your own. So what is it that you need to do? And then a bigger blow came in 2018 when I lost my job. So now all of a sudden I'm jobless. I've got 5 kids that I need to take care of. What do I do? Some people may go in the corner and kick a can. I've never been like that. So for me, I had to fight. And so I want to acknowledge a person in this room, Jesse Crawford, who's part of the RLC team as well. Jesse had always been in my ear and saying, why don't you start a company? Why don't you start a company? We should do this together. And Jesse and I kind of, briefly went our separate ways, just involved in other things. And so we finally came back together and we started putting together the dream team, if you will. And so having the ability to then pursue my dream as far as building this new company allowed me to be able to have not only confidence that I can do it, but then also it formed a stronger bond between myself and Jesse and some others from the team. It also showed my kids who had never had that exposure. Like I grew up, again, in a really rough situation. My kids didn't have that. And so for me, it gave me a chance to be able to show them, how can you take yourself in the situation that you're in and get yourself out of it? don't feel sorry for yourself. Pick yourself up and get yourself out of it. So figure out what is it that you want to do and then pursue it. And so throughout my life, I've always led by what I call the 12 disciplines. And so the 12 disciplines is what we go through in various stages of our lives. And many of you have already, you go through these yourself, and you probably don't even realize that you've included all of the lessons in this 12 disciplines. But these are lessons that I've learned, whether growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, whether going through the school program that I went through, or as an adult later on. So I'll just go through them. The first one is identify your own level of success. And what I mean by that is, so many times we get put in a bucket, and people tell us, how we should be or how successful we should be. I have a friend of mine who grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in, and so this is someone that. So he's married, he's got 3 kids, and he's moved his family across the country a couple of times to find an opportunity. And the job that he has, it's a nice job for him, and he's done well for himself, but he felt that he hadn't achieved the level of success that he needed to achieve. And so I had this conversation with him, and I said, Walter, you are a success. What you've been through and the fact that you had enough courage to take your family across the country to find opportunities, that is success. I think too many times we measure ourselves based on materialistic things. And so for him, that's what he was looking at. He was thinking of, I'm not making as much money, or I'm not doing this and that. First off, the fact that we survived that neighborhood is a success. And so I had to remind him of that. The next one is surround yourself with ambitious people. Too many times we come in and we have the energy that we need. And I'm sure you have some of those friends that will call you, and you're looking at your phone, and it's like, do I have an hour to just listen to this person? I have a friend like that when he calls you, he drains your energy. He's always negative, it's like, woe is me and everything else, to a point where sometimes, I'll just, I try to talk to him and try to encourage him, but it always comes back to the negativity. And so what it does is it drains that energy. And so what I've learned is surround yourself with ambitious people, those that want to see you succeed just like you want to see them succeed. And you feed off of that energy. And so again, I mentioned Jesse, also Paige. Thank you very much. Paige Adams is also another person that has been in my life and Jesse's life as well, who's given us that positive energy. Life is hard enough. And so to not have people that are encouraging you to do certain things that would push you to that level of success is difficult. Again, it's draining. The third one is emulate success. And so what I mean by that is I knew that I wanted to be a business person, or eventually I found out that I wanted to be a business person. So one of the things that I did was, number one, find people that could be a mentor. Or you can also look at it from a virtual perspective. I had certain mentors that I saw on television. My very first mentor was George Jefferson from the Jeffersons. If you remember that TV show, Moving On Up, I was a kid, and I didn't see businessmen that looked like me in the neighborhood that I was in. It was all of the business people were either Caucasian or they were of a different race. And so the only business people that were in my neighborhood, unfortunately, were the drug dealers. And so for me, when I first saw George Jefferson on television, I saw, wait a minute, we can actually own businesses. Like, it was just a concept that blew me away. And so what I wanted to do was to pattern my life so that I can be in a position to be able to create something just like he did. And so unfortunately it was television, but it still gave me that drive to try to push myself. The next one is pass on your knowledge. Too many times, we achieve levels of success, but we don't seek folks that we can mentor. We don't seek opportunities that we can pass on that knowledge, and that knowledge is key. I wish, again, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, somebody pulled me to the side and said, listen, you have this. There's something about you that is going to lead to this. I didn't have that until I went into that high school program, where actually I almost got kicked out of the program because they thought that I wasn't doing enough for the kids that were coming up. So they actually had to force me to see something in myself that I didn't see. So you have to pass on that knowledge. Don't be afraid to be different. So many times, we get caught up in I want to fit in. I want to be able to just kind of blend in with everybody else. And when you have a little bit of height to you as well, sometimes you find yourself slouching because you want to fit in with everybody else. Do not be afraid to be different. When I just started down this journey of supplier diversity, it was something that was different. And so had I gone down the route that I thought I was going to go down, I'd still be in accounting and would be hating it right now. And so here was a situation where I can step out and do something and push myself, stretch myself to do something that was different than what I was doing before. And so always strive to look at how can you establish something that nobody else has done before. You know, I love building something from the ground up. And number 6 is always keep your inner fires flickering. So what I mean by that is the neighborhood I grew up in, you always have that edge. You know, it's something about that edge that you have that you just can't train anybody, you know, with that edge. I brought that into corporate America. And so what I mean by that is it's not a chip on your shoulder, but it's just that I'm not going to allow somebody to tell me who they think I am. I'm going to prove to them who I know I am. So there was a situation where I worked for a company up in Illinois, and I had just gotten my MBA and wanted to be a manager, and there was a position that was open. And the manager said, I said, Pat, I'd like to apply for this position. And he said, Lamont, I don't see you as a manager. And I thought I was waiting. I was thinking he was going to follow it up with, you need to do this, you need to do that. He just said, I don't see you as a manager. And when I left his office, I said, I'm going to prove him wrong. So I ended up getting this job opportunity as a director for a large company. And so I went back to Pat in his office. I said, Pat, I have to agree with you. I don't see myself as a manager for this company. What I do see myself is a director for a $100 billion company. And I left his office. He turned so red, you should have seen. He was as red as your competition. But for me, it meant a lot because I was able to show him, don't you dare bottle me in. Don't you dare tell me what my limitations are because of what you see on the surface. And so when you go out there, you have that passion inside of you to do something. Don't you dare allow somebody else to tell you what that is, to bottle that up and say, you need to fit over here. No, I know I need to be right there. And even having a company established, that was another reason why I did it, was because I kept having corporations that kept telling me, no, we don't want you to build something there. We want you to stay right there. That's not where I am. I'm not a status quo person. And so for me, this is what I needed to do. So if you have that passion, don't just let that set aside because it's going to continue to burn you. Number 7, embrace risks. Too often we always say, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I don't have any regrets in my life. Everything that I've done, even though it took risks, even starting a company, and here it is, I'm looking at it as I'm a widowed father of 5. So why am I starting a company right now? I could easily just go out and work for a company, but I didn't want to do that because I knew what that light was at the end of that tunnel. And so I knew that I had to embrace that risk. It was scary. It's not easy. Any of you that have started your own company, that first year, you're trying to figure out what is it that you're going to sell, how are you going to sell it, who you're going to sell it to. So it's not like revenues just all of a sudden come that first year. So kids are looking at you like, man, Dad, how many times are we going to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwich? But those are risks that you have. I had this beautiful automobile that I turned in because the minivan, there's a piece of crap already. It was already purchased. So that's what I'm going to drive because I knew what that vision had to be. And I wasn't afraid of that. Again, like I mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to be different. Be ready to embrace the risks involved. Number 8, be the only one to define your brand. So just like that example just that I stated, understanding your brand is important as well. So we talk about personal brand a lot. And what that is basically when you come into the room, if somebody knows you, especially, they're going to establish there are certain words that they have associated with you, whether they tell you or not, and they can be positive or negative. Clearly, you want them to be positive. So I had a situation where I was at the airport, and I had a suit on, which usually I do if I'm traveling. I don't sleep in suits, but I just, when I'm traveling, I put my suit on because you want to feel good. And so I went to sit down, and there was a lady that was in the seat. There was an empty seat, and there was a lady in the seat next to that. And she had her purse in that seat. And she saw me sit down, and she hurried up and grabbed her purse. And I'm like, it shouldn't matter, first of all, what I'm wearing. But I was wearing a suit. And it just so happened that I got upgraded, and guess who sits right next to me? And she wants to have a conversation now. I'm sorry, but I can't, because you just labeled me. You just judge me for somebody that I'm not. And so, that brand is important. And so what you want to do is to understand, and you may have some friends that you always want to have, those friends that will tell you exactly how it is. Ask them, what is the brand? What is my brand? When you see me, what is the first thing that you think of? And understand what that brand is and build on top of that. The next one is recognize the pattern and break the cycle. So again, having a situation where you have sisters on drugs and a brother that led a gang and in and out of incarceration, I knew that I needed to break the cycle. I didn't know how. I knew education some way or the other was going to be it, but I needed to break that cycle. So too often folks get caught up in just this is how it's always been. My family is this way, or I've been a certain way. Break that cycle. It is hard, but you can do it. So break the cycle. And that's one of the things I needed to do in order to make whatever that change was. You may not even know what's at the end of that tunnel. But if you don't try to break that cycle, you're going to continue to be in that situation. The next one is, and I love this one, is own your decisions. So when you make a decision, own it. Don't be afraid of that decision, because I'm sure you have family members that will probably approach you and you've made a decision and they made you, they try to make you ashamed because of the decisions that you make. Own that decision. Don't be afraid of that. So again, whether it's starting a company, getting a new job, or things of that nature, own that decision, because again, that's yours and that's part of your brand. The next one is be patient and allow plans to work. Sometimes, or not too often, we want to rush things. It's not on our time. And sometimes it's not. It's also from a timing perspective, you're not ready for that. So there have been times when I thought I wanted something, but it didn't come until much later on. And so sometimes when you try to rush it, it doesn't go right. And I'm always of the belief that you meet everybody that you meet for a certain reason. Everybody that comes across your path, there's a certain reason why, especially if you have integration or some type of communication with them, that you needed to meet that person. And a lot of times that will pan off not only for you, but for them as well. Also, the last one is, and this is near and dear to me. I had a seventh and eighth grade teacher named Mr. Bottom. And every day he would have a quote, "If it is to be, it is up to me." And what this quote is basically, you determine what you're going to do. You can't blame anybody for that. And so what he would always instill in us is, if you want to be successful, you have to make yourself a success. So if you're at a company, you can't sit back and wait for somebody to tell you this is your these are the steps that you have to take for success. They'll provide that to you, but be proactive and go out there and understand that for me to be able to succeed, I've got to own this. And so these are the steps that I need to take in order to own this. And so for me, I've always lived that and always try to instill that in my kids, that you cannot sit back and wait. Time is fragile. And obviously for the last 5 years, I've learned that, how fragile time is and the ability for us to be able to do things. So I'll close with, I don't know how much time I have, but I'll close with, a couple of things. So does anybody know Bundini Brown? When I say the name Bundini Brown, does anybody know Muhammad Ali? Everybody knows Muhammad Ali, but you don't know Bundini Brown. So if you saw the movie Ali, Bundini Brown was played by Jamie Foxx. So he was Muhammad Ali's, he was his cut man. So he was the one that would inspire him, and he came up with the phrase, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and as well as a lot of the other things that Ali would say. The reason why I bring him up is, be your own Bundini. Now, there are certain people that everybody knows, but there's somebody that pushed that person. So for me, it was my mom. My mom was my Bundini. And so sometimes we have our own Bundini, sometimes we are somebody's Bundini, but there are people that are, they're in the background, but they push you to succeed. And so I think it's important for you to also acknowledge those individuals. So if you have those individuals in your lives, and again, because how fragile life is, reach out to them and ask, first of all, thank them for what they did. Ask them how they did it, why they did it. Why did you take such an interest in me? So be somebody's Bundini. Another quote I love is Denzel Washington said that you'll never see a U-Haul in back of a hearse or following a hearse. And what it means by that is when it's our time to go, we can't bring those things with us. And so for us, instead of bringing it in and just, keeping it to ourselves, what our job is to do is to go out there and try to, as much as we can, encourage other people, leave things behind for those people. So that when it's our time to go, and as you look at our headstone, that headstone has two numbers: the year you were born, the year you die. It's that dash in the middle that's the most important. So that dash in the middle is the most impactful thing that you can have. It says everything in terms of when you were on this earth, from the moment you were born to the moment you left, what is it that you did on this earth? And so I challenge all of us through that. What is it that we did? What is the legacy that we leave behind? And that legacy doesn't have to be you went out there and you established a company, you did this, you wrote a book and things like that. It could be just something as simple as you were a good father. You were a great brother. You were a great sister. You worked as hard as you could, within the company, and you influenced those that work for you. You were great in church. You did certain things in church that influenced and impacted others. So when it's our time, let that dash be meaningful. So again, when I think of Dr. King, I think of the ability that he gave me to know that I was somebody special, to know that I can look at a situation and not just rely on what somebody else bottled me in for that situation, but instead look at it as a driver for success. Always look at those opportunities. I tell people all the time, I don't believe in failures. It's only a failure if you didn't learn from it. And so look at those situations where you can rise above what everybody else thinks that you should have, or where everybody else thinks that you should have stayed, that level. So again, I'm very grateful to be here. I'm honored to be able to speak, especially during an event that honors a man that motivated me, even though I never met him in my life. And a weird thing is that he was killed on April 4th, 1968. April 4th is my birthday, but I came 4 years after that. And for me, to be able to have his legacy as a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, even helping small minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBT-owned businesses, he was all about that. He never said, this is the one group that I'm going to look at. He was all about equality. And so having you all in the room and seeing the support that the organization has for an event like this, it brings me back to that. We're all equal. And so that quote that I mentioned earlier, as far as we're all on the same ship, we are. And so our job is to support each other. Our job is to encourage each other. Our job is to feed that positive energy that we have, to those that need it. Our job is to reach out to those Bundinis that we know need to hear from us. Our job is to go out there and be a trailblazer if it's something that is in your mind that you need to get out there, because that's how this world will change. So again, I'm very grateful to be here, and I thank you. And so I'll open it up for questions. Oh, sorry.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, can you guys hear me? That was amazing. We just want to give you another round of applause because that was super inspirational, and I hope you guys were able to take a lot from that and connect that to this week and your day-to-day and taking the 12 disciplines and applying those to your life. We wanted to first just thank you, Lamont, for coming out here on behalf of PepsiCo and on behalf of this week. This is a huge week for us, and I think when we first started engaging with you, we had interviewed several people, but your story really spoke to us and really inspired us, and you had a vision for what you wanted to share. So thank you again. We have a little gift for you on behalf of PepsiCo that hopefully you and your 5 children can enjoy.
Do I have to share? It may not make home.
You can just hide this from them. And keep it
Oh
in your
my
car.
goodness, thank you.
So we got an assortment of snacks for you.
Wow.
To try out
I'm
and
trying.
some new things. Trying to drive trial here.
Well, Jesse, make sure that this gets to the car, because thank you very much.
So now I wanted to take a moment to just, we have a few minutes left to open the floor up to any questions for Mr. Robinson. I think we have our first question back there. And on the webcast, we'll be also checking out any questions if you want to submit to Tiffany.
So you lost your mom, your dad, and your job all within a 2-year period?
About a 3, 4.
So what helped you get through all that? And, maybe what are the disciplines really kind of guided you during that time?
My kids. The moment that I've started to feel sorry for myself, because I'm human, so there are moments when you just think that the world is heavy on your shoulders. I just think of my kids, and I tell you specifically my toddler, my little princess. She she keeps me in line, and so anytime I wanted to quit, I always think of I want a better situation for her. So thank you for asking that question.
And next time, bring a picture of your family, man.
For sure.
Hey, so I know you said that when you was working for a corporation, you felt boxed in. And I know that seems to be a big problem from a D&I perspective with a lot of minorities, is that they tend to leave and they start their own or they work for a smaller company. How do you think those corporations could have leveraged your skill set a lot better?
Well, to me, it's a two-way street. I took the initiative to try to go after those opportunities. So that's what I want to encourage. So if you see an opportunity, go after it, because it's not going to come to you. I mean, it's rare, but just don't expect that it's going to come to you. So I think that's the first thing is, as a person, you've got to own that career. You got to understand that path. For corporations, and you guys do this well here in terms of laying out, in terms of, just these are the opportunities that are available. And then just marketing it, just getting down and dirty instead of, you may have situations where you have one-on-one opportunities where you can talk to people, because not everybody has the ability to raise their hand in a room and say, this is what I want to do. You may have some folks that are more myopic in their approach and just, maybe reticent in terms of speaking up. So what I would say is it's a two-way street. Encourage the employees to speak up, but give them the resources so that they could. But you're going to have situations where sometimes just better opportunities come, and the beautiful part about it is that you can say we built some great resources so that other people would want them. Because sometimes that just happened, and you can't really. I mean, we have that in supplier diversity where you work with a small diverse business, and they get big enough where all of a sudden they get acquired. I can't blame them for that. That's the American dream, right? To build something that somebody else wants so badly that they buy it. So I think in the same situation, I think as long as you encourage them to speak up and you give them the resources, that's the best that you can do.
Any other questions? We have a few more minutes.
Well done.
Thank you.
Hey, could you tell the audience a little bit about what your company does and how you're impacting the community?
So we help businesses to establish what they call a supplier diversity program so that they can turn around and do business with, as I mentioned earlier, companies owned by women, minorities, veterans, LGBT. And so we have certain situations where companies already have programs in place, so we can help to strengthen those. Or we have a situation where we build it from the ground up. But another element of what we do is we help those diverse businesses get opportunities. So we have what's called Connect, where we're finding ways to find those opportunities for those businesses, but then also developing them. And I think that's important too, because as a small business, the fortunate thing is you have folks like myself and Jesse that have been doing this for so long, and we've been on that other side in the corporate world, but you have some of these small business owners that have never been in that space before. And so we're helping to develop them. We also help professional athletes as well transition into business ownership. And that's important because they've been playing on a whole different level. And so I had a situation where I was being interviewed by a diversity magazine, and a former NBA great, Hall of Famer. He had followed me in the interview, and so he was wearing a suit, but then he had 2 earrings in his ear, and he was openly chewing gum. Now, if you just score 40 points and ESPN is interviewing you, that's fine. But when you step into this arena, it's a whole different ballgame. So you may be able to get the meeting, but in order to be looked upon as somebody with great credibility, we would help them so that we would mold them and say, listen, you can't do that. Take the earrings out your ear, take the gum out your mouth. This is the way that you need to approach it, because we all speak a certain language in this business space. And so if you want to be taken seriously, you've got to speak that same language. Thank you.
I have a question for you. So you talked a little bit about thinking about your legacy. My question is, one, what is your legacy that you'd like to leave behind? And then two, what's your best advice for kind of thinking through that? And is that something you consciously, if you believe that you consciously have to think about, or is it something that comes more just from the heart as you grow as a person?
That's a great question. So for me, when it's my time to go and one of my children, they're standing up and they're talking about what their legacy is. What I want them to, the words that I want to pop out are someone that, was not afraid to do something different, trailblazer. I want to be considered to be someone that did something that was, wasn't afraid to step out and do something different. So that's the main thing, just somebody that was willing to change and willing to inspire others to change as well. And I think about it all the time. I think once you become a parent, it's kind of hard to not think through in terms of, I want to make sure that you always want your children to live a better life than you did. And so that's the legacy that I want to leave behind, is that I was able to give them that life that I did not have. So that's why I think sometimes we fall in those traps in terms of giving them too much, and I think part of that is, and I'll never fault a parent for doing that, but, I think part of that is, you want them to experience things that you didn't. Like, we didn't go on vacations when I grew up. Vacation for us was going downtown Chicago. We would dress up and go downtown Chicago. So for my kids, I don't want them to have to go through that. But at the same time, losing my job and having the ability to show them how to build something when you're at the bottom of the bottom, to me, I think that that's a greater legacy that I can show them.
Any other questions? Oh, Timolyn, did you have?
Hi, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming to Plano, Texas, and sharing your story. It's really inspirational to me, and I just wish you all the amazing success you deserve.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're going to have me up here crying like one of those Will Smith cries. So, no, I can't do that up here. Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about standing out and not being afraid to kind of tell other people that you're not going to be defined by their opinion of you. So I was having a conversation just recently with a friend of mine, and she is kind of in that position where her boss is telling her that you may not be right for this job. So what would be an action item that a person can do to let them know, I am right for this job? I may be a little different, approach it differently, but I am right. That's
a great question. The first thing is you got to understand why. Give me specific reasons. So for me, I've always been the type of person that I want to know the specific reasons so that I can make that change. That's why I love being a consultant, because you hear problems and then you have the ability to solve them. But the only way that I can solve a problem is for me to know what the problem is. So if you don't think that I'm good for a certain role, then tell me what I need to improve on. A true manager, a good leader would be able to tell you those things and to give you that constructive criticism, but also for us to be able to accept that criticism. I think it's so, we want to hear all the good things sometimes, but nobody wants to hear the negative things, but the negative things is what I want to hear, because that's what I can help to change and improve. So that's the main thing I would say is, find out the specifics and say, why is it that you don't see me in this specific role? The gentleman that I talked about at the company, he wasn't going to give me that. So that's why I knew that physically I needed to change.
Well, I'll tell you, her manager is not giving her that. They said, we'll handle your PDR.
Then I guess that's an HR question then, because that I don't want to get into. But again, I'll just say, you got to have specifics. That's just like in a relationship. Communication is key, right? So if your spouse is having some problems with some of the things that you're doing, you want to know, what am I doing and how can I improve in that? If not, then I'm shooting in the dark. No problem.
Thank you. I think we're going to wrap it up. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.